Thank you, Caleb. What outstanding song selection. Caleb texted me and said, are there any songs you'd like to sing tonight? I didn't have any ideas, but I'm glad I didn't have any ideas. Those were great songs. Two of my favorites right there at the end. And what a great privilege that we have to worship our God. And just so thankful that you are here tonight, be a part of this assembly as we seek to bring honor and glory to our God, to study His Word together and draw closer to Him as a result of being together. And it's exciting to see you. As has been stated, this is what's being called the Youth Night, and that doesn't mean that it's only for our youth, but the lesson tonight is sort of geared towards them. But I believe that all of us of every age will be able to get something out of this tonight. But before we get to tonight's lesson, I just want to mention a couple things. As you can see, the topic for tonight is walking with Jesus while I'm young. So those of you who are young, like high school and under young is, let me define young around here. I've got some stickers that have this walking with Jesus on it. They're not like cheap stickers. These are nice, stick them somewhere, they'll be there until Jesus comes back kind of stickers. But I like stickers. And so sometimes we get stickers made up for different things down there. So if you'd like one of these walking with Jesus stickers, you come and see me afterwards. I've got a stack of these, and I'd be happy to give you a sticker of these. But I also, for every young person, high school and down, I got to see one young man that's got some of these trading cards already. But one of the coolest things that I have seen in a long time are these trading cards that Apologetics Press has put out. These are incredible. I don't know if you ever collected baseball cards. I remember baseball cards back in the day. Those were fun. And then they came out with Pokemon cards and all this other stuff since then. And I don't know about I see kids trading that stuff. I have no idea what that even is hardly. But when Apologetics Press came out with these cards, these are tremendous cards. And if you haven't seen them, I'm assuming most of you have seen them. But if you haven't seen them, you need to check them out. This what do I put up here? The Peter card. I mean, these are just some high quality, which is what AP puts out. Everything they put out is just the top of the line kind of thing. But to have these Bible characters, 365 of these cards in 18 different series, and so they've got series on the David's Mighty Men. They've got series on the apostles, on the patriarchs, the Old Testament and the New Testament. They got series on women of faith, and just 18 different, but just different characters. And obviously, we don't know what any of them look like. And so Jeremy Pate at AP, he and his friend AI got together and created just all of these images, but just some incredible images. But it's not so much about the images, but to me, it's about what's on the back side of the card and the information that's there, just the fast facts that you can learn about these individuals. And I know you're using them in some of your classes here. To me, one of the best things the best thing on here is what goes right along the edge here, and that's just the lesson. What lesson can we take away from this character, from this event, or whatever it is? So for Peter, it's God uses ordinary people to do extraordinary things. We started using these with our kids down at home, and just encouraging parents, not just for trading cards, but these are ready-made home devotionals. I mean, you don't have to do any prep. I mean, as a family, you can just pull out a card one night, and you can read the passages that are on there. It gives you the key passages. You can read the key passages, talk about the key facts, or those fast facts. Here's the lesson we need to learn. It's 365 ready-made family devotionals right here, and fun to trade. And so for all of the kids, high school and down tonight, I've got packs of the AP cards with me. So you see me, and I don't know, I'm a lot older than you guys, but I think these are awesome. Sometimes maybe high school you might think you're too cool. You're not too cool for these. These are cool cards. And so I could stand up here and talk about these all night. I know he knows about them back there, and several of you do. But the images on them, the ability that you have to trade them with others. And so maybe if you're older, you can get some of your own cards and start trading them with some of the kids and enjoying that. We gave cards to all of our elders And so our elders are going around trading cards with the kids too. I think our elders might be enjoying it more than the kids are. I'm not sure. What a great thing they've come up with. So see me afterwards tonight, high school and under. I'll give you a sticker. I'll give you a pack of cards, and who knows if I've got enough cards? Maybe I'll probably give you another pack tomorrow night. You get 2 packs this week. So cool stuff. Anyway, that's a part of youth night anyway. But Caleb, thank you for leading those songs. I texted Caleb today to ask him how many knew the song Someday. And we're not going to sing it, but it's just, for years, it's been one of my favorite songs to sing. Especially early on, I didn't even know the bass part. You know, early on, we just sang Someday as the bass part, and then they added some cool bass part, which I like even more now. But the song is about Jesus coming back. And the song is about, I've got to be ready when he calls my name, is what the tenor part says. And so it's talking about someday, I'm going to go be with Jesus. I got to think about that song today. Because when I think about young people sometimes, I think that maybe some young people have the idea that, well, someday I'll do something in the church. Someday I'll take my relationship with God seriously. Someday I'll get interested in knowing more about the Bible. Someday. And so that song came to mind today as I was thinking someday, because sometimes for young people you put it off and say, well, I'll get more serious about that someday. I want to encourage all of you young people tonight. Don't wait till someday. Start today. And you make up your mind right now, I'm going to walk with Jesus. I'm going to start right now walking with Jesus, and I'm going to walk with Jesus every day of my life. Not someday, every day of my life from here on out. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to get your Bibles and go to Luke chapter 2 tonight. In Luke chapter 2, we're going to look at a 12-year-old Jesus. And I know some of you are older than 12. And say, oh, I'm older than 12. What can you learn from a 12-year-old? Well, you can learn a lot from a 12-year-old. Remember I was telling you about that 5-year-old boy who led a prayer one day at Sunday lunch? I learned a lot from that 5-year-old boy leading prayer at lunch that day. So I don't, remember what Paul said to Timothy, don't let anybody despise your youth. Don't look down on a 12-year-old. Don't look down on a 5-year-old. Say, oh, well, what can they teach me? I learned a lot that day. And so you look at Jesus when he's 12 years old in Luke chapter 2. And we might have some 12-year-olds here, and you can relate. We might have some here that are looking forward to being 12 one day. We might have some here saying, I'm thankful I'm not 12 anymore, and that I'll never have to be 12 again. But I want us to see what we can learn about Jesus in Luke chapter 2. And I want us to see what we can learn about walking with Jesus by using the word walking to talk about these points tonight. 7 points. We're going to walk through these. We're going to march through them quickly. But I want you to think about, what can we learn from Luke chapter 2? What does it take for me? Not just as an old person, and by the way, all of these are going to apply to old people too, but what does it take for me as young people to walk with Jesus? Number one thing, and we're going to walk through these verses one by one here, Luke chapter 2, beginning in verse 40. But if we're going to truly walk with Jesus, then we've got to make up our minds that we want God's approval more than we want anybody else's approval. Look in verse 40. Where the summary of Jesus' early years is made in verse 40, where it says, the child grew and he became strong and filled with wisdom. And then depending on your translation, some translations at the end of verse 40 are going to say, and the grace of God was upon him. What does that mean? Well, other translations are going to say, the favor of God was upon him. You might think, well, of course the favor of God was upon him. He was the Son of God. But it wasn't that way. What was it about Jesus? What was it about Jesus that made the favor of God come upon him? It was this. Jesus wanted God's approval more than he wanted anybody else's approval. You know what we want, and this doesn't really expire. This doesn't really go out of date as you get older, but you know what we want today? We want to be accepted. We want people to like us. You go to a new school. I don't know if any of you have gone to a new school. You go to a new school, you don't know anybody. You want people to like you. Secretary at church has a little boy who's in the second grade. And last year, in the middle of the school year, last year he started a new school in first grade. So he had been going to a school, and then first grade, right in the, it wasn't even at Christmas. It was just smack in the middle of it, and he had to start a new school in first grade. And I remember him coming to the church office after that first day of school, and it was a rough day because he didn't know anybody. He's trying to make friends with people. What? We want to be liked. We want to be accepted. But here's the deal. Who do you want to be accepted by? Whose approval do you want? There were some in John chapter 12 who loved the praise of men more than they loved the praise of God. And so they made decisions based upon that. They made decisions that I'm not going to do what I should do because I want men to like me more than I'm interested in God liking me. In Galatians chapter 1, Paul says you can't have it both ways. Galatians chapter 1 and verse 10, the David paraphrase of Galatians 1 and verse 10 is Paul saying, if I'm trying to please men, I can't please God. I can't do both at the same time. And so if you're going to walk with Jesus, I want to encourage you tonight to say, I really, really want God's approval more than I want anybody else's approval. And that's hard. That's hard because we see everybody else. We see our friends. We see the people at school. And we want to be accepted. We want to be drawn in to those certain crowds. But think about what matters. Think about whose approval truly matters. Here was Jesus, and a summary of his life in John 8 verse 29, Jesus says, you know what? I always seek to do those things that please God. You all are surrounded. You're surrounded by a group of people, old and young, surrounded by a group of people who want God's approval more than anything else. I have enjoyed being with this church and seeing the interaction of these members, an interaction of old and young together, as this church is trying to seek God's approval above everything else. So what does that mean? If I want God's approval, how does that come into play in my life? Well, if you're on social media, if you're on social media at all, what do you post? What do you share? What do you like? What is it that you're involved in even looking at? And before I post or share, before I go in, is this really going to bring God's approval? Is this going to help God to accept me? When you're going and trying to get new friends, are these the friends that are going to help me? Proverbs chapter 12, verse 26, one of my favorite verses. It says, the righteous should choose his friends carefully. That's some good advice. Because my friends are going to have quite an influence on me. And I want to be accepted by them, but you know what? I want to be accepted by God. So first thing, and this point shouldn't surprise you that this is the case, that if we're going to walk with Jesus, we need to want his approval, but maybe you wake up every morning, and just in your own mind, you wake up in the morning and say, God, please help me today. God, please help me today to walk with you. You know, there's prayers that I pray throughout the day. There's longer prayers. There's a prayer list that I have that I go through every day. But probably 20 or 30 times every day, I'm praying those 4 words. Lord, please help me. Standing in the pew and walking up here, I was praying, Lord, please help me. When somebody calls me on the phone and they want to talk, and in my mind, Lord, please help me. And all throughout my day, whatever's going on, Lord, and so if you can wake up every morning, say, Lord, please help me today. Please help me to walk with you. Please help me to make good decisions. What about the letter A? When we're walking with Jesus, where does the letter A come into play? Look at verse 41 and 42. And what I want to see in verse 41 and 42 is what I want to encourage you, if you're going to walk with Jesus, is for you to always go to church. Now, I know Jesus wasn't going to church in the way that we think about going to church, so I'm using that terminology accommodatively here, but I want you to see what he was doing. In verse 41, the Bible says his parents went to Jerusalem how often? Every year. They didn't just start this, we got a 12-year-old now, we better start taking him to church. You know, we need to teach it. No. They did it every year leading up to that. So Jesus, he knew that trip back and forth from his home to Jerusalem. He knew what that trip looked like. And so verse 42 says, when he was 12 years old, what did they do? They went up there because that's what they always did. Every time God wanted them to go to church, guess what Jesus' family did? Again, I'm using the terminology accommodatively. I know they're going to Jerusalem for the feast days, but bring it into your vernacular. Think about Jesus' family. Think about Jesus. If I'm going to walk with Jesus, I got to do what he did. He was always, and it wasn't just when he was a kid. Over in Luke chapter 4 and verse 16, when he's an adult, it says that he was going to the synagogue. In chapter 4 verse 16 says, as was his custom. He was going. Now, that was instilled with him, no doubt, in his young years, but when he became an adult, he kept walking. And that wasn't just once a year. Synagogue, he was going there every Sabbath, as was his custom. I want to urge you, young people, always go to church for the rest of your life. Now, here's the deal. I'm going to read your mind right now. And what you're thinking is, well, of course he's going to say that. He's the preacher. The preacher has to say that. I mean, the preacher has to go to church, so he's going to tell everybody else that they have to go. No. I'm not saying this to you as a preacher. I'm not saying it to you as a preacher. I'm saying it to you as a Christian. I'm saying it to you as a dad. I'm saying it to you, hopefully, as a friend. The very best part of my life is being a part of the Lord's church. And central to that is being with God's people every time that I can. I cannot imagine what my life would be like if I was not raised in a home where I didn't go to church every time. We traveled a lot growing up. My dad is, I don't know if you all know David Lipe here, but David Lipe has an expression. He talks about how hard he would work on his cars, and David Lipe would say, well, this guy worked his liver out. Well, that's what my dad did. My dad worked his liver out for 11 months out of the year so that 3 or 4 weeks in the summer we could take a vacation. And from West Palm Beach, Florida, 2 times we drove from West Palm Beach, Florida to Alaska. That's 5,000 miles one way. Me and 3 sisters. You want to know what's wrong with me? How did this guy get so weird? I was stuck in the back of a station wagon with my 3 sisters for 10,000 miles round trip. That's what's wrong with me. But every time there was a church service, guess where we were, even on vacation. And that's back before the internet, where you could look them up on the internet and figure out where they're meeting. But my parents made sure when we were even on vacation, we're going to church. Just because we're on vacation doesn't mean we're taking a vacation from God and taking a vacation from the church. They made that a priority. Don't you think that sunk into this little boy's mind that, wow, this is that important? Make it that important. That you won't miss. And for me, even as I grew up, and even now as an adult, I'm thankful for Wednesday nights. I don't think I can make it from Sunday to Sunday without being with the church. When I was growing up, we had a lobby similar to yours back there, and we had a bulletin board out there. And for years on the bulletin board, maybe you've seen something like this. For years on the bulletin board, it had a drawing of a what are those sausage dogs? What are those sausage dogs called? Wiener dogs. What are they? Dachshunds. Thank you. I couldn't think of the name of the dog. So they had a picture of this Dachshund on there, but it was like, I don't know, it's like do you all have like SUVs that are the extended version, the extended edition of the SUV? This was an extended edition of the Dachshund dog. I mean, it was long, but its little belly kind of drooped down in the middle, but in the drawing, they had put a skateboard in the middle of the belly of this long Dachshund dog, but the skateboard was labeled Wednesday nights. And it said, it's a long way from Sunday to Sunday. And so they stuck, the skateboard, and I feel that. It's a long way from Sunday to Sunday. I'm thankful for Wednesday nights, where I get to come back and to see each other and be refocused and recharged and refreshed. I could talk a lot about this point, y'all, but always, if you're going to walk with Jesus, always be at church. Don't let anything interfere. You make the decision. You make the decision, I'm going to go to church rather than be involved in sports. They're going to keep me from church. I'm going to go to church, and I'm not going to allow any of my Saturday night activities keep me from getting up on Sunday and going to church. Don't make your parents make those decisions. You make those decisions. You walk with Jesus, and you be the one to make those decisions. Sometimes I've had parents ask me over the years, should I make my kids go to church? You know, my kids are getting older. They're kind of, expressing their own opinions about things. Should I make my kids go to church? I don't know how many times I've been asked that. And so sometimes I've turned back around and said, well, do you make your kids go to school? Well, that's not the same thing. Well, do you make your kids, your kids get sick? Do you make them take the medicine? They don't like the taste. Well, that's not the same. I mean, what's the we make the kids do all sorts of things, but all of a sudden, church becomes optional and everything. That part I haven't understood. But let me twist that question around on you all. Instead of asking, should I make my kids go to church, should you make your parents go to church? What if your parents get up on Sunday and they say, well, I'm not really feeling it today. Why don't we just stay home? What would you do? You know what you need to do? You say, no. You get up, you get me to church. Should I make my parents go to church? You know what the answer to that is? Yes. I better make my parents go to church because that's what we need to do as a family, is to center our lives on the Lord and His church. Let me ask, is the church first? If fishing was first in your life, would you ever have to ask? Somebody have to make you go fishing. If fishing was first in your life, you know where you'd be? You'd be on the lake all the time. I mean, there wouldn't be any question. But if the church is first, then there's no question where I'm going to be. And not just where I'm going to be, but where I want to be. All right, that's a lot on that. I could keep going. Let's get to the L. What do I do when I get to church? What do I do when I get to church? What did Jesus do? Now, you know the story in Luke chapter 2. It's a fun story. That after the feast days, Joseph and Mary get back with their caravan, and that's how they traveled. They weren't like the Sproule family driving in a station wagon from Florida all the way to Alaska or what. They were traveling in a family caravan, not minivan caravan, but a large group of just dozens, hundreds of people traveling together. So it's no wonder they didn't know Jesus wasn't with them. You wouldn't be hanging, if there's a couple hundred people, you all are sitting, aren't you sitting back with your parents? Because you're sitting, I'm not sitting with my parents. And that's the way Jesus was. He's 12 years old. He's going to be with his friends in the caravan. He's not going to walk with his parents. And so Joseph and Mary just probably assumed, well, he's with his buddies. And they travel a day's journey, right? 20, 25 miles anyway. Can you imagine being 20, 25 miles away from your kid and you didn't know where he was? And not just your kid. He's the Son of God and you've lost him. I don't know. I would have been a nervous wreck, and so they come back. So a day out, a day back, third day they're looking around Jerusalem for him. Where'd they find him? Found him in the temple. What's he doing when they find him in the temple? Well, he's painting graffiti on the temple walls, right? He's running around knocking the old widow ladies over, and they got their walkers, and he's knocking into them. And is that what he's doing? Look at what happened. Look at verse 46. Now, after 3 days, they found him in the temple. What's he doing? Sitting in the midst of the teachers, both listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were astonished at his understanding and his answers. What do I need to do when I walk with Jesus? Don't just always be at church, but when you go there, listen and participate. Exactly what you guys are doing tonight. Listen and participate. That's what Jesus, he's not running around. He's sitting in the midst of the teachers. He's listening to them. He's asking them questions. He's answering their questions. Isn't that a great thing to do? He's involved in what's going on there. He's not just a spectator. It's not, well, this is for the adults, and I'm not really an adult yet, so I'm just going to sit back and wait. Parents, it is never too early. It is never too early to help your kids to participate in worship. It's never too early. Our kids need to grow up and not, it's, church shouldn't be game time. It's God time. And as much from a young age as we can instill that, sometimes parents treat, Bible class as that's for the kids, but church worship, that's for me. And so let's just keep the kids occupied and quiet. And yeah, that's good, occupied and quiet. Both of those are good things. But if we can keep them engaged at some level, something that's age appropriate, keeping them engaged, keeping them involved in the worship service. I'm thankful that I've looked over at you all while we're singing, and you're singing. That you're a part of the worship of God. It's not just everybody else singing, but the young people in this church are singing. Because it's not just everybody else's worship. This is your worship. This is your worship to God. And so you need to be engaged and you need to be singing and a part of it. I would encourage you to take notes. To me, one of the best ways for me to stay engaged in a sermon is to take notes. And even if there's not PowerPoint, PowerPoint for me is like sermon notes for, you shouldn't use the D word dummies, right? But sermon notes, it's just like, I can do this easy, right? Here it is, and copy paste, I can write this down. And, I was at Polishing the Pulpit in August back in Sevierville. And for whatever reason, they asked me to speak a few times there. But one of the sessions that I had was a teen session. And in that session, probably 70-80% of them were teens. And then the other folks who invade the teen space. Let me know if we need to do anything with that Amber Alert. Is that an Amber Alert? That's what the sound my phone makes with an Amber Alert, some kind of alert. But so anyway, there's some older folks in there as well. But it was interesting to me. It was encouraging to me. There's probably 200 teens in this room. And I would say somewhere around 60 to 70% of them were sitting there taking notes. I spoke in some adult sessions as well. And in the adult sessions, it was maybe about 15 to 20% of the people who were taking notes. And I was just like, if you all could come over to the teen session, and if you could just take a look at what they're doing there, and sitting there and taking notes. And so one of the things that we've got at home is we've just printed off, and we have out in our lobby just something we call worship notes that kids can pick up and come by. And so there's something in there for kids of all ages, even if they can't take notes. You can do the tally marks. You all do the tally marks where, okay, listen to the preacher, and when he says Jesus, just put a mark here. When he says church, put a mark here. And just keeping tally marks of following along with the sermon and keeping up with those key words that are said. But being engaged, listening, and participating. When you're able to do that, a few months ago, I pulled off of my shelf, and it's way up on a top shelf in my office, but pulled off on the top shelf there an old notebook that I had from when I was your age. And I looked at some of the notes that I took on parchment paper way back then. It was kind of silly and laughable at some of the notes that I took back then, and yet I remember sitting there taking notes when I was a kid, and I'm glad I kept the notebook just as a funny reminder of what I used to think, it was what I needed to do. But thank you for being who you are. Thank you for what I've seen here and the young people who are engaged in the worship service, not just observers, not just saying, this is time for mom and dad, but saying, this is time for me. How do I walk with Jesus? I need to be one who's always there, and when I'm there, I need to listen and participate. What about the letter K? What can you do with the letter K as you're reading through these verses? Look down in verse 48. When his parents saw him, they were also amazed. So the men he's talking to in verse 47 are amazed. His parents are amazed in verse 48. His mother comes to him and says, son, she says the same thing to her boy that your mom would say to you. Maybe a little bit nicer than I don't know. I don't know your mom necessarily, but she comes over to him and says what? Why have you done this to us? Do you not know? Look, your lowercase f father and I have sought you anxiously. We've been looking all over the place for you. And what does Jesus say to her? Why did you seek me? Did you not know that I must be? And depending on your translation, it's going to vary. But what you see here about this young man is that here was a young man even at 12 years of age. And again, you can say, well, he's the Son of God. Of course he knows this. No. He's a 12-year-old boy. But even at 12 years of age, he knew his purpose in life. And his purpose gave him his identity. Here was a young man who was able to say, now depending on translation, some translations say, I must be about what? My Father's business. Other translations say, I must be in my Father's house. And so you look at the translation, well, those are different. And so which one is right? My Father's business or my Father's house? You look on the screen, and on the screen is what the Greek actually says. The Greek language just says, I must be in the things of my Father. Well, that's kind of generic. And that's why the translators are trying to figure out, well, is he saying I must be in my Father's house where he is? Or is he saying I must be about my Father's business in the work of my Father? And the reality is that both of those are correct. Because Jesus was saying to his parents, now notice the difference between the Father that Mary talks about with the lowercase f and the Father that Jesus talks about with the uppercase f. He's concerned about his Father in heaven. And he's making sure that he is involved in the things of his Father, and he recognized that was his purpose. And that purpose, that was his identity. We live in a world today where people are confused and being made to be confused about their identity and who they are. You belong to Jesus. He came and sought you, and he came and bought you. That's how we sing that song. He sought me and bought me. He did that for you. And when you give your life to the Lord, you belong to him. That becomes your identity. And in your identity, you find purpose. You know, sometimes people think that their identity is what they do for work. You know, my daughter is an accountant. But that's not her identity. That's what she does for a living. But that's not her identity. My other daughter is in cybersecurity. She's a cybersecurity analyst. She's the smartest one in the family, obviously. But that's not her identity. That's what she does for a living. But how many people, they become a doctor, a lawyer, they become a teacher, they become a whoever, and that becomes their identity. Because, well, I do so much of my life around this, no. Our identity is Jesus Christ. That's who I belong to. And so when I go throughout my day, I need to know what my purpose is. What's my purpose today? My purpose is to wake up today and is to pray and to say, God, please help me. Please help me to be who you want me to be today. Please help me to identify myself with you today. Help me to fulfill your purpose today. Maybe this involves taking a sticky note and writing on a sticky note, I belong to Jesus, and putting that on the mirror in your bathroom so that every morning you get up. I assume you go and fix your hair. Yeah, all of you fixed your hair today. So, you go in and you look and you fix your hair. I stopped fixing my hair a long time ago. But, you fix your hair, and there's a little sticky note that says, I belong to Jesus. I don't know if that helps, but something that's just a little reminder that says, this is who I am. And I'm going to go out today, and I might be a football player, baseball player, I might be a trumpet player, I might be a cheerleader, I might be in this activity or school, that. Yes, we get all these activities. But who I am is a possession of Jesus Christ. And here's a 12-year-old boy who says, don't you know that's what I've got to do? That's who I need to be. I want to encourage. I know you expect a preacher to say that kind of thing. But I want to challenge you to do that. What about the letter I? Here, I'm going to give you a clue. The first word in the statement up here, the first word up here is going to be the word insist. Insist. So what do you have a right to insist? I want to encourage you tonight to go home and put your foot down and just insist. This is the way it's going to be. You just let your parents know. You lay down the law when you go home tonight, and you insist on this. You just let them know, look, it doesn't matter what you think. This is the way it's going to be. And you got to insist on it. They may not be really sure about your well-being there, but just insist on what? Keep reading here. Don't you know that I must be about my Father's business? Now, verse 50, his parents didn't understand the statement which he spoke to them. Verse 51. So Jesus went down with his parents to Nazareth. The Son of God went down with his parents to Nazareth, and he was subject to them. Here's the Son of God, and guess what? Even the Son of God respected his parents. Even the Son of God obeyed his parents. I want to encourage you tonight to go home and just insist, I'm going to obey my parents. If I'm going to walk with Jesus, I'm going to walk in his steps. That's what I've got to do. And it's not optional. I've got up here that your parents, and I think I said this the other day, but your parents have got a tough job. You may not believe that. They've got a tough job. They're trying to raise you. Would you like to raise you? I mean, that's hard. That's a tough job. They're trying to get you to heaven. That is their whole job. Psalm 127 tells them that you are a heritage. You're a gift to them from God. And it says you are like an arrow in the hand of a mighty hunter. So you're like an arrow, and they're doing their best to aim you towards heaven. And it's really easy if the arrow doesn't move. But you all move. And so you're a wiggly arrow. And so they're trying to shoot you towards heaven, but you're a wiggly arrow, and you keep moving around, and they keep trying to readjust and refocus and re-aim. They've got a tough job. But their whole purpose, with all of their rules, with all of their do's and don'ts and the things that you're allowed to do and not allowed to do, it's all because they love you and they're looking out for you. I promise you, I know that sounds weird. You're thinking, no, you don't know my parents. Maybe I don't. But if they're here tonight, I'm pretty sure I know that their desire is to get you to heaven. And so everything they're doing is for your good. So I want to encourage you to be like Jesus, to be respectful. When your parents ask you to do something, just go and do it and fulfill what, and maybe even just surprise them sometime and do something before they even ask. That'll blow them away. If they hadn't even asked you and told you to do something yet, just go ahead and do it. Then you don't have to worry about when they're going to ask you to do it. It's already done. You want to surprise your parents? Sometime either tell them or you could text them. Maybe that's easier. Write them a little note that just says, thank you. Thank you for raising me in a place where I get to go to church. Thank you for raising me in a home where I can walk with Jesus. Not everybody has what you have. And just a little note to your parents that says, thank you for what you do for me. Thank you for helping me. Obedience is not a hard chore if it's something that I want to do. You know, we have to obey God, and we could look at that as a hard chore, but it's really not. Remember what Jesus said? If you love me, what are you going to do? You're going to keep my commandments. Does that mean I have to and they're going to be hard? No. If you love somebody, it becomes really easy. It becomes really easy to do what they want you, what they need you to do. If you love your parents, it's not so hard. They love you. They love you. And that's why they're looking out for you. Letter N. What's the letter N for us? And really the letter N kind of covers this whole passage. And that is, I just want to encourage you, like Jesus, to never be ashamed of who you are. Don't worry about what other people think. Don't worry about what other people say. Never be ashamed of who you are for God. You look at Jesus. And here's Jesus as you go through this list. He wanted God's approval. He wasn't ashamed of that. He always went to church. He wasn't ashamed of that. And when he got there, he wasn't writing graffiti on the walls. He was listening and participating. He wasn't ashamed of that. Don't be ashamed of who you are. Don't be ashamed to believe that there is a God. The evidence for the existence of God is overwhelming. The evidence for evolution doesn't exist. There's not a shred of evidence for evolution, But the evidence for the existence of God is something you can't even get to the end of that list. Don't be ashamed that you believe in God. Don't be ashamed that you believe that this book is from God. It's the evidence for it being from God. You get in and study, wait a minute, there's no way this is from man. You're right. It couldn't be. Man could have never produced this book, but only God could have. Don't be ashamed that you believe this book is from God. Don't be ashamed that you believe that Jesus is the Son of God. Don't believe that you stand up for biblical morality and that you look at something that's right and something that's wrong. You say, no, the Bible says this is right. The Bible says this is wrong. And I'm not ashamed to say this is what the Bible says. And if somebody looks down upon you because of what you believe and for the stands that you take, those aren't the people you need to have approval from anyway. Don't be ashamed of who you are. Don't be ashamed of what you believe. Don't be ashamed that you're a part of the church of Christ. Oh, you're the church that believes this. You're the church that does this. You're the church that does... Don't be ashamed. If you're a part of the church that you read about in this book, there's nothing to be ashamed of. When Paul wrote to Timothy, 2 Timothy chapter 1, you get to verse 8, and he tells Timothy, don't you be ashamed of the testimony of the Lord. You get down to verse 12, and he says, I'm not ashamed. In all of these things, Paul says, I'm not ashamed. Why? Because he says, and you know this because you sing the song, I know whom I have believed, and I'm persuaded that he's able to keep whatever I've committed unto him until that day. Don't be ashamed. There's not, when you have truth on your side, there's no reason to be ashamed of it. It's interesting in Hebrews chapter 2 that the Bible talks about Jesus. And quoting from the book of Psalms, Hebrews chapter 2, verses 11 and 12, when it talks about Jesus looking down at us as his people, he looks at us as his brothers. God is our Father, and the Father is his Father. So he looks at it, but it says in Hebrews chapter 2 and verse 11, he's not ashamed to call us brethren. That just blows me away. He's not ashamed to call me his brother. Don't you be ashamed to call him your elder brother. Call him your Lord. Last thing, real quick. I know we've been spending a lot of time on this. What about the G? As you look at your life and as you're striving to walk with Jesus and you're trying to do that more and more, let me encourage you to just grow. As Christians, I think sometimes we reach a point where we feel like we've reached a certain plateau and we don't need to grow anymore. Don't be like some of the old people you know that have stopped growing. In the Christian life, there's never a point where you stop growing. You don't ever max out. I want to encourage you to grow to be more like Jesus every day. He's left us an example here in Luke chapter 2, but really He's left us an example in everything that He did for us. So I want to encourage you to transform yourself more and more every day, to try to transform yourself to look more like Jesus. 2 Corinthians chapter 3 and verse 18 says, as we get into this book and we behold His image in this book, we're transformed into that image from glory to glory. The more time you spend with Jesus, the more you look like Him. You know, we've had couples down at home who've been married for 60 and 70 years, and I don't know what it is, but they almost started looking like each other. Now, they didn't. There were distinctions between them. My grandparents were married for 50 years. My grandfather was about my height. My grandmother was about 4 foot nothing. And I mean, they couldn't have been more different. But after 50 years together, they looked like each other. Why? Because they spent a lot of time together. When you spend time with Jesus, you won't help but look like Him. You'll have a hard time not looking like Him. So much so that in Acts chapter 4, you know what they said to Peter and John? Acts chapter 4, verse 13. We know that you're one of, we know that you're, why? Because they resembled Jesus. We know you've been with Him. And if we live our lives with Jesus, people will know that we've been with Him too. There's so much that I would love to say to you tonight. And I hope something that we've talked about here tonight will help us as you try to walk with Him. Maybe every day, maybe every week, just find something about Jesus and say, you know what? Jesus was kind. I'm going to try to be more kind to people this week. Jesus was humble. You know what? This week I'm going to try to be more humble than I had. And just maybe pick a quality about Jesus. I'm going to try to be like Jesus more in this week than I ever have been before. You know what's fun to do? It's fun to be nice to people. And it's really fun to be nice to people who aren't so nice to you and they're not expecting it. I have a lot of fun being nice to people who aren't nice in return. And isn't that what Jesus did? Isn't that the golden rule? If we live according to those principles, maybe we'll get closer to our Jesus and not do it someday. Young people, don't say someday I'll be a Christian. Someday I'll walk with Jesus. Someday I'll get serious about God. Someday I'll do this Christian. No. You do it today. You start walking with Him today, and you've got 50, 60, 70 plus years of your life you'll get to give to Jesus. I'm looking at future elders, future deacons, future elders and deacons' wives. I'm looking at future preachers. I tell you, there's no better life than being a preacher. And of course, you expect me to say that too, right? There is no better life than being a preacher. People ask me, when did you decide to become a preacher? Danny, everybody's got their story about when they decided. I don't remember the day I decided to become a preacher. For as long as I can remember, I was going to be a preacher. I can remember, I don't know why, but when my dad built a house down in South Florida, when we moved in when I was 2 years old, and he put we live in West Palm Beach, Florida. He put a big old fireplace in the living room. I'm like, okay, when are we going to use this in South Florida, right? But he would crank the AC down to 60 degrees. We'd put our sweatshirts on, and we'd go sit in front of the fireplace. But when the fireplace wasn't on, that was my stage. At 3 years old, 4 years old, I was lining up my stuffed animals on the couches. I was talking to you about my Star Wars figurines. I preached to Obi-Wan Kenobi until I was blue in the face, but he never responded to the invitation. I don't know what his deal was. Darth Vader never even showed up for church. But I cannot remember a day that I didn't want to preach. You know what the church needs? It needs guys who are going to stand up for the faith. And whether you become a preacher in the Lord's church or not, this church right here is full of men who preach. You walk in their steps, and when you do that, you're going to be walking with Jesus. Don't just do it today, and don't just do it this week. Make up your mind you're going to walk right into heaven and meet Jesus. If you're not ready to walk into heaven and meet Jesus tonight, would you get your life ready? Would you make up your mind? Believe that Jesus is the Son of God. Repent of sins. Turn away from sins that are in your life. Make up your mind, I've got to stop doing what's wrong. Start doing what's right. If you're ready to do that tonight, you can confess the faith that's in your heart and be baptized and allow Jesus to wash away all of your sins, put you in His church, add your name in heaven so that you can walk with Him for the rest of your life. If you're not where you need to be, please come right now as together we stand and sing.